have a seat, Mr. Mickelson. Where would you like to go? You can be any time you care to.
Love is drawn in the form of a circle, a forever. Always. And always.
The past doesn't just belong to old photos and history books anymore. Now we can live it, touch it, change it.
Wherever you are, whenever you are, I will find you. We'll find our way back.
What if you go back and change your past, but you end up with no future?
I'm starting to forget my wife.
Don't regret the past. That's what brings us to where we need to be.
We're all set. Have a wonderful trip.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Let's see what the past has waiting for you.
All right, thank you. So my first question was, reading the premise and then watching the film, all the time travel shenanigans, it's very easy to go bombastic with that. But the tempo of the movie is very slow and even and really thoughtful in a way. What made you want to take, the more subtle approach, I guess I should say, because it really is a wild premise.
Well, thank you. First of all, thanks to all of you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to sit down and speak with me about the film. Honestly, in answer to your question, I think I chose to take the film in that direction because that's the way I felt when I read the short story. What I appreciated about Mr. Silverberg's writing is that he didn't try to explain time travel and he didn't try to explain love. And these are two amazing forces in nature. Obviously, we're not at the point of time travel yet, but there's so much technology in our lives. The fact that we're sitting here talking over Zoom, I don't know how it works, but it works and it becomes just a new facet of our lives. And the same with relationships. There are oftentimes we can't explain why you walk past 1,000 people and they mean nothing to you, but there's that one person, there's something about them, and it just sparks you. And to be able to tell a mature, thoughtful story, I mean, those are the stories that I'm attracted to. I loved the film Her. I loved Steven Soderbergh's Solaris. And there's a lot in there that I can't explain or that I can't understand, but they were very mature stories that involved genre, but also explorations of humanity. And then most importantly for me, to be able to tell a genre adjacent story, to tell a story that's very thoughtful and mature, and to do it with a BIPOC cast, that's just not something you often see with us. And yet it exists, it's real, whether we're interested in it on the page or whether it represents aspects of our lives about regret or second chances or what ifs. So all of that to me made me want to tell a story that was thoughtful, that was mature in the way that it's dispensed, that respected an audience. We didn't have to rush from big moment to big moment, but that they would follow us along and follow these lives of these characters every step of the way.
Great. And just a reminder, everyone, to please state your name and outlet before asking your question. Next up, we have Summer.
Hi, Summer Brooks, Slice of Sci-Fi. This story was compelling and beautifully shot, but to me, the music, the soundtrack, and the score were as much a character as the people. How did you go about selecting that sound?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate that you appreciate the beauty of the storytelling, and for us in every aspect, trying to treat every single department, not just the camera department, not just hair and makeup, but every department as real partners. So in some aspects, Mark Isham, the composer, is a composer I worked with for many years, worked on American Crime with him, worked on the documentary that we did, Let It Fall, about the LA uprising. And he's just someone who's not just really talented, but really understands inarticulate ways that I describe music. You know, I can't write music. I can, barely tune a radio. So it's great to have partners when you go, oh, I need a little bit of this, but this kind of emotion, but this feeling, and it needs to be minimalistic. And he can look at it and go, yeah, okay, I've got it. I can handle that. There's other pieces of music. An amazing singer that I've gotten to know over the last few years, Tamika Lawrence, who just has a phenomenal voice. And I asked her, I said, do you have a song? Do you have anything? I'm making this film, anything I could put in it? And she had a track, and it's just so beautiful. And it plays in a moment with Leslie and Frida, and it's just spot on perfect. Our normal music supervisor, someone I work with all the time, Adana Wade Reed, she was able to find these great tracks that we use for needle drops throughout. So it really is a team effort. And one of the things I love about filmmaking is there's so many things that I don't know, and I love being able to say to really artistic partners, I don't know much about this, so educate me, find these songs, find these individuals, let's put them all together, and hopefully then the end result is what's happened here. You really notice the music in the right way. It doesn't overwhelm. It's not so forward that it diminishes the rest of the storytelling, but it's really there and it's really impactful where needed.
Great. And next we have Kuya.
Hey, Kuya P, NRW Nerds Rule the World. Hey, John, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since I saw you in DC and DC. I love this film. The cinematography was beautiful. Can you just talk about maybe some of the shot selections, the choices you made in the presentation? I want to live in this world.
Again, thank you very much. And I have an amazing partner that I work with, Ramsey Nichol, who's the DP. I've known him back since American Crime. And he just loves the camera. He really loves both the lighting and the operating. He lights and he operates. And I love working with one person who does all of that. One of the things that I really appreciate about the camera work, I'm glad that you think it was really beautiful, but when you have actors like Cynthia and Leslie, two amazing theater actors who can, they can do the scene and they can do it over and over and they can hit it the same way every time. And that's not an easy thing to do. So there's a moment where Cynthia comes in and Leslie realizes there's something wrong in that house. And he really starts pressing her about Tommy and has he seen her again and what's going on with the relationship. And we do that whole shot. It's, maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes of storytelling. In one take, we end up in a close-up of Cynthia, who's just emoting so spot on, just so beautifully at the end of that scene. To me, every time you make a cut, it dissipates the emotion in a scene. Sometimes that's very intentional. You want to break things up. You want to give it a little bit of pace. There are other times where if you can be with an actor and let that scene evolve, that's what you want to do. So to light it beautifully, to get the camera moved, to be able to work with actors who can be repetitive in the best possible sense, repetitive in terms of hitting those marks every single time, why would you not want to dial up a shot that really is experiential and makes it a little bit uncomfortable for the audience? Okay, these two are arguing. I don't know if I want to be here, but you want to be here for that moment. So again, it's working with terrific artisans who understand the intentionality of what we're trying to accomplish and then have the ability to execute it in ways that are beautiful, thoughtful, very emotive, and really underscore everything about the maturity of this filmmaking. And I appreciate all of your questions so far have been complimentary, not really questions. Some of the questions have been indicative of a complimentary nature of what we try to do as artists.
Great. And next we have Gaddy.
Hey, John, to kind of keep along the theme of the visual sense, obviously circles were important in the filming process, but I was really blown away by water and how it connected with the love elements of the story, the waves, all the great scenes on the beach. Can you talk a bit about the importance of capturing kind of that water love motif and also how it connects perfectly with circles?
one of the things again, thank you very much. I appreciate that you were able to find that connectivity, because it is something that we really wanted to lay in the film. And in the short story, one of the moments that's really central for all these characters is the beach in La Jolla when they were younger, when they used to hang out. And when we started thinking about how do we represent time in any science fiction story, but certainly one where we're operating with a limited budget, how do you represent time? And for us, one of the things that we really landed on was that sense of fluidity. You know, time is always moving for us, at least as far as we know. It's moving in one direction, but it always flows. And you can think about the moments of change. And yes, maybe it's flowing in this direction, or maybe it's gone off on another tributary, but it flows. And so we took that idea of flow, we took the moments in terms of being central to the story, the beach in La Jolla, and really wanted to try to build on that. So there's a moment when Cynthia and Leslie's character think about going somewhere, but they're going by seaplane. There's a moment with Cynthia and Orlando where they're talking about the past and they're standing by their pool. There's the end of the film when we finally go through some of the time travel, and there's the cinematograph of the wave, and there's the circle. Certainly the wave form itself, it looks, as much as we were able to, like a wave, like something that's flowing. So it was very important to us to have that as a theme, to lay that through, and then to really try to find moments for these characters where something significant is happening and there's water involved. And even the moment where Frida's character is arguing with Leslie and saying, you know, I deserve better in a relationship. She's at the sink and she just run some water and cleaned her dish. So I appreciate that you were able to see that. It's one of those things, even as storytellers, that maybe people see it and understand it. Maybe it's just us going off on a jag of like, oh, we're going to be so creative and put these things in. But we do think it's very important for the process for everybody to take moments and understand, just even in the storytelling, these obelisks, and say, okay, this is going to happen in this moment for this reason. And that's what we're all working towards. So I do think those kinds of things, even if the audience doesn't get it, they're very important benchmarks for us as storytellers to try to arrive to these demarcations in the story.
And back to Kiara.
All right. So what I wanted to ask about was, you know, more bring it a little bit further back to the plot. Something that a recurring line in the movie is, I just want you to be happy, or something along those lines. I was wondering if you could speak to that and like what that's supposed to represent in a movie all about, you know, relationships and people trying for others.
What was really important to me, and what I take away again from when I read the short story, at least the way I felt, that there weren't bad people in this story. And, you know, Orlando's character is not a bad guy. He's someone who loves someone very much. It didn't work out. He has regret. And he feels like, oh, if I could go back in time, I could change that. And how many times do we feel that way about life? There's a moment where we find out that Leslie, his character, maybe unintentionally, he may have done something that brought him closer to Cynthia's character. So to me, one of those motifs is it's not that people are being bad because of their choices, but ultimately there are moments where Orlando was saying, I didn't, you know, even if I only notionally remember what I did because of time travel and the way it may change the past, all I ever wanted for this individual was happiness. And how many times do we say that? You know, I'm not going to speak for any of you, but I think of times in my relationship in the past where things didn't work out, but it was like, look, all I ever really wanted was happiness. I wanted that for you. I wanted it for me, but it didn't work out. So in relationships, when they don't work out, it's not about somebody being bad. This wasn't a story, again, where I wanted, you know, it would have been very easy to make Orlando or whoever played that character a bad guy. But that, to me, is an easy out. Relationships are more complicated. Love is more complicated. Our lives are more complicated than that. And sometimes we look back and go, hey, I never meant to hurt you. I only wanted you to be happy. But the reality is this doesn't work. And that, to me, was a motif, because then the romantic side of me at the end is, everybody really happy? Does everybody get to say, well, they all get to live happily ever after? We know that's not always the way it is in real life. But I wanted, you know, at the end of this story, not just that people were rooting for this couple or this person against that person or that couple, but maybe there is a reality where all of us could get the things that we want. We could still end up as friends, and there is a measure of happiness. And when we started making this movie, it was well before the pandemic, but I'm so happy that after the most difficult year that we've had, that one of the first stories that I'm coming out with is one where it espouses, you know what, there are better tomorrows. There's happiness, there are happy endings. Maybe it's just in Hollywood, but I'm very happy. Speaking of happy endings, that at the end of all this, with the sport of Lionsgate, we're able to bring this film out and bring it out in the form that all of us as artisans wanted this film to be presented in.
Summer.
You mentioned reading the story and being drawn by it. What was there a specific element in the story when you read it that compelled you, said, this is the story, this is the one I have to adapt and make?
It was a big idea in a very small package. I think the short story was 11 pages. And when I was done with those 11 pages, I couldn't forget the story, everything about it. The ease with which Mr. Silverberg dealt with time travel, the richness of the characters, the complexity of the moments. I mean, they're just, even in 11 pages, just talking about the differences in the effects of the time travel. Sometimes you just end up in a different car. You know, you started the day in a Toyota, you ended the day in a BMW. He made mention of people who are so wealthy that they have insurance companies that if you died in a plane crash, their job was just to, you know, jump into a time machine and go back and make sure you didn't get on that plane so that you lived. And all of that in 11 pages, but a level of emotionality that just the most potent love stories that I hadn't felt, but also not saccharine, and also one that didn't talk down, one that really treated its characters with a maturity. So all of those elements, just for me, it was a story that I had to tell. And it was a years and years long process. But that was all right. You know, there's a line in the story, don't regret the past. It brings you to where you need to be. It was very fraught. It was very difficult. It was difficult, you know, right up to the moment that Lionsgate bought the film and putting it all together. But to be able to sit here now, to speak with all of you, to know that to some degree or another, all of you have responded to very specific elements of this film. It makes everything, all of it, very, very worthwhile.
Kuya.
Hey, John, brilliant cast. I really enjoyed this cast. You did your job casting this amazing cast. Can you talk a little bit about choosing this cast and a character in particular there, or actor I in particular really enjoyed, who I wasn't aware of, Jaden Wong, her conversations with Leslie Odom's character. Wow. So if you could just touch upon the cast and Jaden Wong and Leslie's interactions.
Well, let me start with Jaden, since you asked about her. She's just such a phenomenal individual, a terrific actor. Had been on a fairly long-running CBS series. No disrespect to that series, but I don't think they gave her due. She came in and read and was just spot on in terms of being somebody in a minute, you know, okay, that's your best friend. You know, as a family member, that's someone you laugh with, you cry with, you argue with, and then you start again the next day and have that same cycle. And her connectivity with Leslie was just, you know, chemistry is key. And I really, really wanted a brother and sister relationship where it was a full relationship in and of itself. And, you know, Jaden had that ability, and I'll certainly say with Leslie, as an actor, as an individual. My wife loves Hamilton, so we saw it a bazillion times. And even seeing Leslie live, being, you know, just feet away from him on a stage, it still doesn't express the level of talent that he has. And I was very fortunate to work with him very early in his film career, but you just see where that's going because he's just that talented. I'll talk about Frida and Orlando real quick. Orlando is, you know, one of the biggest stars out there. When I was trying to do Let It Fall as a narrative, we ended up doing it as a documentary. Orlando reached out to me and sat down with me and was like, I think this story is amazing. I think it's difficult. If I could ever be part of this story, please, I would do anything to be part of it. To have somebody who's that big of a star internationally reach out to me and reach out about a project that was important to me and important in terms of expressing race and relations and where we were and where we are, that was incredibly generous of him. So when this film came along, he was someone I thought would be a perfect Tommy. And it had that range. He starts out and you think he's just this sort of rich a-hole. And then you realize, no, he has dealt with things and has been through things. And he has an emotional core as well. And just an amazing young man, and really enjoyed working with him. Frida I'd worked with in the past, very particularly on Gorilla. I cannot say enough about Frida as an actor. And I cannot say enough about her as a person. She is so cause-oriented, so gracious, out there fighting the fight for representation, gender politics, all of that. So, you have these amazing moments with her on set, and then she's talking about, oh, I got to go do something with Michelle Obama and voters' rights and things like that. And you're just like, she's absolutely amazing. And I adore working with her. And then Cynthia. And Cynthia was, originally the part was written for another actor that I'd worked with and was all set to go. And honestly, about 2 weeks before filming, the other actor, their schedule wasn't going to work and they couldn't do the film. And I was gutted. I was gutted because I knew the person that I was going to work with, had a great relationship with them, professionally speaking, was very excited about it. I didn't know who was going to replace this actor. There's a moment where you think nobody is going to be able to replace them. Met Cynthia on actually it was Skype back in the days when things were Skype and not Zoom. We were in a scout van. She was in New York. We talked for a minute, and I realized that this young lady is her talent, her savvy, her understanding of herself and what she can bring, but still at the same time wanting to really get in and work. And that's my thing with actors, is really getting in and doing the work and going through the processes. It was a phenomenal experience. And where she is now, I am not surprised. I'm just very thankful I had the opportunity to work with her at all. But in this film opens and you see Cynthia, not to give it away for people who have not seen the film yet, but that opening moment, that opening frame, it's weird to look back and to know that I thought for a minute, I'm never going to be able to replace the actor that I was going to work with. In some ways, you can never replace people. It wasn't about replacing anyone. It was finding someone else who brought a fresh take and a fresh perspective and an amazing performance, and then became part of this ensemble that is, frankly, one of the best ensembles I've ever worked with. And I've been fortunate. I have been around some amazing groups of actors. So I think that covers everybody. But yeah, all of them. They're, like you say, man, they're money.
Great. And Gaddy.
John, this is a little bit of a broader question about your writing process, because you've been able to tell so many different stories through genre. You've jumped so many different mediums, whether it's comics to obviously early comedic TV work to more dramatic work, films. I mean, you've done it all. Your novels, Spoils of War, is amazing. I'm curious, is your process the same in the different mediums? Is it different? Has it changed? I mean, is there something specific you like when you're writing? Like you got to use a certain pen or a certain computer. I mean, what do you do when you're in that process?
That's a very good question. And, I'll be honest, it's a little bit of all of that. Every one of those aspects of writing is a little different. It's different in the approach. It's different in the execution. It's different in the expectations, and different in some ways in the limitations. One of the things I love about writing graphic novels, other than either 20 pages or 22 pages, you can do everything. There's no budget. You want an alien invasion. You want somebody, swinging from skyscrapers on a tether. You can do any of that. And I love it. And it's exciting. I love working on a set, and you've got 150 crazy, unique, very particular individuals. They're all artisans, and you're just wrangling them and trying to get everybody focused on a singular vision for telling a story, and somehow you pull it off, and people respond to that. That's an amazing feeling. And yes, when I do certain things, I'll sit down still with a pen and paper and write it out in longhand. There are other things, I got to be on the computer, and I have a widescreen computer. I need something on the left and the right, and I got to write a certain way. More than anything, I just enjoy it. I enjoy the process. I enjoy the challenges. I enjoy the different spaces. I enjoy when one of them becomes overwhelming, or I get frustrated, or I get tired of, television executive notes or dealing with the studio or something like that. I can just shift to another form of writing. And it's really, very sincerely, it's therapeutic, and it feels good, and it feels right. And I will say, though, that I'm fortunate in a regard. I don't think anything is ever given in life. I think I've worked very hard for the opportunity to tell stories in many spaces. But for a young Black kid who came from Wisconsin out to Hollywood, the math was against me. So to be able to be here and tell stories, I'm going to take advantage in the best possible way of every opportunity. So, back in the day, I wrote you talked about the different spaces that I've written in. I remember writing like a Static Shock episode of a TV series, I think when it was like on Fox Kids or something, and there were people, I was writing a drama on television, and people were like, well, why would you do that? Why would you ever do it? And I do it because somebody asked me. I do it because I haven't done it before. I'm doing it because if I do it well, maybe they'll ask me again, or maybe that'll shift to a different space and I can try something else. So now I write graphic novels. I'm writing Black Panther. I'm writing Batman. And I like to think it's because I proved that I could do it, or I had the interest in another space. So I love everything about it. And this is one of those careers where you don't control, when it starts, you don't control when it ends. So what I can control, I do control, and that is the execution and doing the best of my ability every single time with every opportunity that's presented when it's presented.
All right. Thank you all so much. That's all the time we have. You may exit the roundtable. Thank you all again.
Thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for your questions. Thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thank you for an awesome movie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Love the cast, and thanks to Lionsgate. Bye.
We'll be right back.